Can you see it from the back?
Yes.
Okay, I'll help out a little bit. How can you be so thoughtless? There's just nothing there. Now, what's interesting is that there is at least one situation where it's a good thing and there are benefits of being thoughtless. And I'll get into those. In fact, remind me if I forget to bring it up. But I'm really going to talk about thinking skills. And René Descartes, famous mathematician and famous philosopher. In fact, if you've ever studied the Cartesian coordinate system, that came from René Descartes. He also came up with this quote, "I think, therefore I am." And this has been paraphrased by several musicians. The Moody Blues, do you remember there's this song, "I think, therefore I am"? Also Billie Eilish, "I think, therefore I am, I am." And what happened with Descartes is that Descartes was curious about, it was the existence of God, and he said, well, does anything exist? I thought that I was in a situation before and I was dreaming, I was deceived. Could I be in a dream? Does anything exist? And then he decided that if something was questioning whether or not something exists, then something existed to be doing that questioning. So he came up and he formulated from there. From there, whatever exists is, what you can call it, the galaxy, the universe, the cosmos. You could call it whatever, the greater God that you believe in. But there are different definitions, and those are just words for it. So he came up with, "I think, therefore I am." And the thinking, I'm going to use to kick this off the example of road rage. Because most people, if not everybody, has experienced road rage. Who's experienced road rage before?
You mean to us or by us?
Either way. I mean, it happens to just about everyone. So I was thinking, what is an example of the natural thinking skills? And one example is road rage. Now, I used to plan too many things during the day, and I was always jamming too much in. I'm also very competitive. So I'd get on the road, and I wanted to get ahead, and I wanted to win. So imagine this situation where you've got an appointment. Google Maps tells you that it's going to be that it's going to take 25 minutes to get there. You have an appointment in 30 minutes. So you've got a 5-minute buffer. Should be good. So you start going onto a freeway, and you're on one of these merge ramps where you're supposed to zipper in one after the other, and this truck comes up, trying to wedge in ahead of its time. And it's not just a truck, it's a Cybertruck. And it's black. It reminds you of Darth Vader. So whether you like Cybertrucks or not, when you're driving on the freeway, it's kind of nice to see ahead of you, to see how the traffic's flowing. And Cybertrucks are not good to look at. So anyways, you manage to get in line, and the Cybertruck falls in behind you. You get on the freeway. You slowly navigate your way into the center and into the left lane, and you're in the fast lane. You're keeping a reasonable stopping distance. Lo and behold, in your rear view mirror on the side, guess who's coming up? Darth Vader. So he's wedging his way in and out, and you're going up the freeway, and you leave a little bit of a distance. He gets up slightly ahead of you, so you tighten it a little bit, and Darth Vader cuts right in front. How do you react? I saw a very visceral reaction. What have you done before in that type of situation?
Blow the horn.
Blow the horn?
Give them a salute.
Give them a salute. A one-finger salute. I mean, go ahead.
Get out of the way.
Get out of the way. That's another one. Now, being competitive, to me, there's kind of a win-lose thing. Do I want to let that person win? So, trying to get around them. But when you think about your objectives, you're trying to get to an appointment on time. You're trying to get there alive and safe. If you start getting aggressive and fighting your way in and out, one thing is you might get further back behind. I don't know if that's happening. You get into the other lane and you get further behind. It could be aggression. You could get in a wreck. He could swerve at you, or he or she, Darth Vader, could swerve at you. Your blood pressure can rise. You can have health issues. None of those serve your objectives. Now, getting ahead of that Cybertruck may save you 5 seconds, 10 seconds. So if you sit back and think about your objectives, it really doesn't help to try to get upset, get in front of them. The person might have a real emergency, or they might just be a jerk. You don't know, but it's something that, for your objectives, it really doesn't matter that much. And so I've become a better driver recently. It helps to be retired because it's not as much pressure, but still, it helps to think through what your objectives are and then relax. You're not going to keep your heart rate down. I'll give you a technique to use in a minute of how to relax in that type of a situation. But you've got natural ways of thinking, and understanding what drives your thought process helps you improve your decision making. So you've got a mind and you've got a brain. Your brain is part of your body, which is part of your nervous system. It's actually defined as part of the nervous system itself. Your brain is physical and your body is physical. Your mind is metaphysical or non-physical. And they think differently. And sometimes they work together. It's almost like a marriage where some of them, one may take more control than the other at a given time. But they can work together. But your nervous system, throughout history and through evolution, your body has been driven to survive. And so it's got to react very quickly to survive. So your brain and your reflexive system are driven by what they call the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. It's driven by fight or flight, rest or digest. And that drives that instinct. If the car comes in front of you, you're going to try to jerk around. You hear a loud noise, you react to it. That's a survival instinct, and it happens like this. And it's required for your survival. Whereas your mind is not part of the physical body. It's part of what separates us. Your thinking skills is really what defines who you are, and what you do about it defines who you are. So your mind has the ability to think in terms of past, present, and future. What's happened in the past? And this helps in that situation with the road rage. What's happened in the past, what happens in the future. In fact, when I talked about this, last time when Richard heard it, I had someone say, "Oh, so I should be go into mindfulness in a road situation." No, you kind of want survival skills and a combination of thinking through the decision making. And I'm also going to give you a formula, a kind of simple to remember formula for making better decisions. But you need this fast reflexive reaction. So you can't eliminate it completely, but you can manage it with your engaged thinking. So your mind can help manage the way your brain reacts. Again, some of the brain's reactions are based on evolution. Some of them are based on training, like Pavlov's dog. You're deciding what you want to behave, what you want to modify. So you can actually take control of modifying your own behavior in that way. So there's a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It's really great read. In fact, he won a Nobel Prize in behavioral economics based on that book. And I kind of boil it down into, I call it reflexive and engaged thinking, the fast and slow thinking. And I really love the book. It helped me understand how the mind and the brain work differently. Sometimes they can collaborate with each other. Sometimes you want to just decide what you want to delegate to your brain and its reactions. But one of the things that I wondered about was mindfulness. And where does mindfulness fit in this continuum between your brain and your mind? What I finally decided is that it's not really fitting within that continuum. In fact, that example of a marriage between the brain and the mind, it's kind of like there's this virtuous menage a trois where you can invoke this other party called mindfulness. Now, there are a lot of definitions for mindfulness. Who has some definitions? What does mindfulness mean to you?
To be considered.
To be what?
To be considered, the person needs to be, have consideration and have positive expectations.
Consider it positive expectations, okay, good. Anybody else? Dave?
Almost like kind of a hyper awareness.
Hyper awareness?
Being present.
Being present? Yeah, it's really being in the moment, appreciating what you're doing, what's going on in the moment. And I thought, how does it fit into this? What's, I think sometimes with graphics and how does it fit into this kind of a model? And if you take this engaged thinking, past, present, and future, and if you can isolate the present, being in the moment, your fight, flight, rest, and digest, isolate the rest, the relaxed part of it. That's how you achieve mindfulness. And I'll get into that a little bit more here, talking about mindfulness and some techniques for achieving mindfulness. But it is this state of presence, and it takes a balance. So there's balance between these three when you want to do which. In fact, at my last talk, I mentioned about the road rage situation, and someone at the end of it said, so in that situation, I should try to become mindful and mindfulness. And I said, you probably want to be very aware in that situation. The road rage, yeah, there is. You want to, be aware of cars cutting in and out. You want to have a little bit of this. You want to think about the future. I want to get there on time. I don't want to get a heart attack or have someone pull a gun on me. So it does take a balance in deciding and delegating which one of these you want to invoke in a given situation and what the balance can be. It takes focus, like this formula that I'm going to give you on engaged thinking. There is some focus involved. It's not painful, but it takes some attention and some focus. Whereas this is usually just reflexive. It's a reaction. It doesn't take that focus. So you want to be able to, like in the road rage, it's a little bit of a balance. You want to be aware if a car cuts in front of you or someone hits the brakes in front of you, and you want to think about your future and come to this decision that, it's just not worth it. I'm going to relax. Get there 5 seconds later. And by the way, I haven't fully trained myself. So I have to think about it, and there's a breathing technique I'll give you that helps you think about it. So breathing is one of the ways to achieve mindfulness. Part of the process of achieving mindfulness is trying to do and think of one thing at a time. Now this can be sipping your coffee, a drink, or wine, whatever you like, and just stopping and thinking about the flavor and the taste. One of the beauties of being in this body versus your mind versus brain is the ability to have senses. So just thinking one thing at a time, or a taste of a dessert, having that in your mouth. You can achieve it through running, through walking, through exercise, through visuals, through listening to music. You can do it with meditation. There are many different types of meditation. And breathing is one of the most simple, fundamental ways to achieve this. And one of the other goals of mindfulness is if you can get to the stage where you're in a stage of non-thought. You're not really actively thinking. So back to that cartoon about how can you be so thoughtless? Well, there is a situation where you might want to decide that I'm going to try to achieve a state of thoughtlessness, just letting it flow, being respectful of the moment, being mindful. Breathing is one of the simple ways to do it, and it has a lot of benefits. So before I give you this technique, I want to ask you all to test out how you're breathing right now. And there's not a wrong answer. I'm going to count to 15 seconds, and I want you to count how many breath cycles you take in that 15 seconds. Then we'll multiply by 4 and come up with how many breaths you're doing per minute. So, okay, everybody get ready, and when I tell you to go, let me just get 5 more seconds.
In and out, right?
Yeah, complete breath in and out. No wrong answer. Ready, set, go. Stop. How many breaths?
3.
You did 3 breaths? Okay, so 3 times 4, that's 12. Okay,
8.
8, so 8 times 4. How many is that?
32.
32? I was a math major, but theoretical math. I really am.
I would get 2.
You did 2? Okay, so that's good. So 8.
I've always been a slow.
I'm getting my data from some Stanford research. There's a book called Breathe, another really good book. And what they calculated is that on average, most people take 20 breaths in a minute.
20%.
Yeah, so you did 32. So yeah, but it's, or 12. You did 12. Okay. Deep breathing is targeting about 6 per minute. So that's 10 seconds per breath. In fact, and you don't have to be exact with this. Like, there's multiple techniques for doing this. You don't have to be exact. But one of the things that I do with this is that if I'm doing an exercise like a plank or standing on my head and I want to count 30 seconds, it's just 3 deep breaths. It's not 1,001, 1,002 all the way up to 30. It's 3 deep breaths because it's 10 seconds per deep breath. So you can use it for simplifying some of the other activities like exercising. But the first part about deep breathing is your nose, doing nasal breathing. It does multiple things for you. It filters the air, it warms the air, and it moistens the air. It also creates 6-time nitric oxide. Not to be confused with nitrous oxide, which makes you get all unspunny at the dentist's office, but it's nitric oxide. And what nitric oxide does is it helps trigger oxygen absorption. In fact, Viagra was basically an offshoot of how do we create a drug that does what nitric oxide does, only, letting the blood flow. So this is for free. You get extra nitric oxide by breathing through your nose. In fact, Nesbitt says, what if I have trouble with my nose? Like I've got a separated septum. And he goes, what do you do when you have a problem with plumbing? You get it fixed, call a plumber. Try to get it fixed. So anyways, if you can breathe through your nose, that's the first part. Secondly, the slow breathing, what we just went through. This example of 6 breaths per minute. This creates a higher carbon dioxide level because you're breathing in, and then you're holding, the example I'm going to give you is you're holding that inside. So you're actually taking it in, and then you're letting the carbon dioxide, which also helps trigger oxygen absorption. So there's a good thing. CO2 plays an important part of breathing and absorbing your oxygen. In fact, you get 70% greater oxygen absorption. Now that's pretty amazing. 70% greater oxygen absorption than you do by breathing your 20 times a minute. Overall, it improves immunity, your health, your mood, weight, circulation, a lot of great benefits of deep breathing. When I have trouble sleeping, I wake up sometimes, and sometimes it's good. Like I've written a book, and I'm contemplating writing a book, deep diving into this topic. But I'll have ideas that'll come up to me, and I'll get up and I'll write them down. I'll think about it. But if I want to try to get to sleep, one of the approaches that I will take is to try doing deep breathing. And I'll sometimes do it like counting back from 10, like 10, 9 through the breaths. And then at the end, actually, I do a little mantra that I picked up. It's a great little mantra by a monk who wrote a book called Living Living Jesus, comparing the similarities between the 2 religious concepts. So it's a great way to relax yourself, and it's a great way to help yourself get back to sleep. And you just keep doing it. You try to think of one thing at a time. Think of that breath in this exercise that we're going to go through. And that's a way to move towards the mindfulness, is that one thing at a time, being the breath, which brings you all of these phenomenal benefits. So let's try this, a deep breathing exercise. Now this is coined the 4-2-4. There's 3 steps to it. First is inhaling for a count of 4. Ideally, it's a second each. That equals 10. But it doesn't have to be exactly that amount of time. But you can work your way up to it. So from the bottom of your lungs to your top, trying to fill them completely for the count of 4. Hold it for 2. That gives time for the magic to happen. All that nitric oxide, carbon dioxide, the oxygen getting absorbed into your system for 70% greater efficiency. Then exhale from the top to the bottom. And it takes some practice if you haven't done it before. But let's all try this together. So everybody, inhale as much as you can, filling up the bottom of your lungs to your top of your lungs. 3, 4. Hold it. 1001, 1002. Exhale, top to the bottom. 3, 2, 1. Exhale. Let's do it one more time. This time on the exhale, kind of squeeze your solar plexus, your diaphragm to get it out. Try to fill it up. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now you can just practice that on your own. It's very simple. 4, 2, 4. One of our colleagues, Stu, about 3 months after I did this exercise with them a couple years ago, and about 6 months later, Stu comes running up on the golf course. He goes, "You know that exercise you taught me? I do it every night before I go to sleep." So it really does help. You don't have to do it all the time, but when you get into situations where you need to relax, you want better oxygen absorption. I did it first thing when I got up here. I took a deep breath, relaxed, slow breath, before I said my first word. It relaxes, gets you ready. Now, doing this can help you achieve mindfulness, either just breathing, or as I mentioned, it could be mantras, it could be other exercises, chants, it could be prayers. But it's also a good start with the engaged thinking. Now we're shifting from your body and your brain to your mind. By the way, there's a name for it called mind-body dualism, where thinking about, you've got 2 parts to you. Different theories on it. I personally think your mind is the real you. In a book called Genesis, actually it was Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari, really good book on AI. He's the one who wrote the book Sapiens, which is great. But he talked about how this is, some people consider it the mind-body problem, that your mind is trapped in a body. I think just the opposite. I think it's a mind-body opportunity. Your mind has an opportunity to experience this physical world, the sensations, even do communications that you could not do without the body. Speaking, touching, hearing, seeing. Yeah, to me it's a huge opportunity. But engaged thinking is using how to more effectively do decision making and to use your mind instead of just your brain. But a good start is take a deep breath. Or multiple breaths. When you get that car cutting in front of you, Darth Vader or whatever, Toyota or whatever, take a deep breath first. Get yourself relaxed. Disengage from strictly reactive behavior, reflexive behavior. So, hang on. Yeah, we're a formula, so let's go through this formula. I shortened it to ORA, but it's really a shortening and abbreviation for the O is objectives and options. R is some combination of results, reactions, rewards, and risks. And the final one, A, is act and assess. So think about the road rage situation. We talked about objectives. What are your objectives? Your objectives were to get to an appointment within a half an hour, get there safe and alive, and feel good about it. So its objectives, what are the options? To try to cut in front of them, to slam on your brake, to turn your bright lights on. Actually, my wife's seen me do a lot of these. But the real options is to just relax, and I'm training myself to more and more relax in those situations. And by results, reactions, you've heard the term, sometimes people talk about how someone has no filter. It could be things that you say. Well, guess what? People do have filters. They might not be using them, but they do have a filter. And part of it, and this is an example, one way of achieving that filter is, okay, I've got someone who said something rude to me, a relative. Okay, I could just tell them off. How are they going to react? In fact, someone brought up politics, even political discussions. You call them stupid. How are they going to react? How are they going to feel? What are their rewards? You really think you're going to be successful in a discussion? So try to think through some combination. What are the risks in the car? What are your risks? What are your rewards? You might get there 5 seconds sooner. And then there's the act. And the act can even be deciding not to do anything. Like in the car situation. Your action might be, I'm going to just stay in my lane. I'm going to relax. I'm going to be there on time. I'm going to be there 4 minutes early instead of 5. Or maybe on time, or maybe even if it's a little bit late, it's not that bad. So anyways, this is a formula that you can practice for decision making. Aura. Now, we talked about the mind and the brain and the way they think. It's mind-body dualism. And they call it the dual process. How the mind is reflexive or fast thinking, or the brain is. The mind is more engaged thinking or slower thinking. So the next question that comes up, it's very topical, is what about AI? We'll take the bottom here, your mind and your brain. One of the things that mindfulness does, it can be achieved by being in the present and relaxing. It actually can connect you to an extended consciousness. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and had ideas flow to you? Or when you're very no, remember? Good. Well, you probably sleep very well, which is good in itself. Well, I know I sometimes do. In fact, ideas about the book or the talk, sometimes in the middle of the night, it'll just come to me. Something, my subconscious, or some extended consciousness. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I hope so. It'd be nice. Things can come to you. In fact, artists and scientists have taken advantage.
So would you call subconscious and the mind? How would you differentiate?
Well, subconscious, I actually think of it more as an extended consciousness.
Okay.
It's a relaxed consciousness. And again, some of this is the terms. What's the term for it? And what is it for them? Salvador Dali used to have a technique where he would basically harness this. He would sit in a chair with a spoon in his hand, elbow leaning on the chair, over a dish. And he would sit down as he was going to sleep and wait. As the spoon fell and hit the dish, he was in this kind of middle point, subconsciousness between being awake and asleep. And that would wake him up briefly, and he would get up and start painting. Mm-hmm. Same thing was true with the scientist, not Bill. Who's the one that invented electricity? Edison. Edison used to do this with a steel ball. So he would do a similar technique to be creative in this point. So you can achieve a kind of an extended consciousness by harnessing this, or even meditating and mindfulness. I had one situation in college where I was a freshman and I was swamped. I was overwhelmed. My first midterm exam, and I decided to do meditation instead of staying up all night and studying. Next morning I got up and I felt like anything I wanted to know came to me. It slowly wore off. By the third exam, it wasn't quite as efficient. But anyways, you can achieve the state where things can come to you that are hard. Your mind, your brain is actually kind of getting in the way of the process. So mindfulness helps you achieve this, and this is organic, your brain and your body. Your mind is inorganic. It's non-physical. Again, spiritual, whatever word you want to attach to it, it's metaphysical, it's non-physical, but it's there. Something is happening. Whereas your body and brain are physical. Enter AI. AI is physical. It's running on silicon right now. It's not organic. Some people call it synthetic intelligence. Now they are studying ways to maybe doing organic, computer processing and so forth. So things are evolving on this front, but it's different. But it's really useful and it's really dangerous. Being inorganic, it's not alive. You can't hurt it. It can't feel guilt or shame. And it learns by trial and error. It's constantly learning. In fact, the way AI works, one of the simple example of a technique for AI is word completion. It's you write a sentence and it guesses what. Let's look at the next word. Let's look at the combination of the next two words. Let's look at the combination of the next three words. Simultaneously, it's doing this thousands of times to try to come up with that next word or the next pixel in a picture. So that's what it's doing, but it's doing it by trial and error also, and it can make mistakes. In fact, trial and error, it's got to make mistakes. So this is where it's important to bring it back here. By the way, right now, you need your brain to interface with it. Just like your brain and body is what helps me interface with you right now, talking, hearing, seeing, you've got to type or speak into your AI to be able to communicate and leverage the AI. It also, as of the writing of a book that was Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt wrote a book that was released about 9 months ago. It's called Genesis, really good. Henry Kissinger passed away this past year, 100 years old. But he wanted to finish this book, but it talked about AI, what can happen with AI. So they wrote this book together, and he talked about how it's how it can be useful, but the problem is without having any kind of a conscience. It has no conscience. It doesn't, no guilt. The final decisions, you really need to check them out. You need that human interface to test out and decide whether or not AI, you're going to use the results or not. But when they wrote the book, they calculated that AI can process information 150 million times faster than a human. That's phenomenal.
How do they measure that?
They just the thought process, the quickest human beings solving problems and accessing information. So you can have access to extended knowledge. Here we've got extended consciousness, extended knowledge, and it really all comes back to your mind and how you want to decide how to use it. In fact, another great quote I call it that Isaac Asimov did in 1988. Saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. So this is why it's really important for applications like medicine. Most medical facilities require a human to make a final decision. AI can go through and look at millions of examples of people's genetic background and illnesses to help come up with the most probable way to cure it. But in the end, they let a human decide whether or not to go forward or not. So you have that same opportunity using engaged thinking. If you think about the example we did with the road rage and with AI, the first part are what are the objectives. If you want to use AI, how many of you have used AI for things like ChatGPT? You people? My wife and I had our 30th anniversary in March, and I was sick. We had to sleep in separate bedrooms. So I woke up and I sent her a text. I heard laughing in the other room. she realized I used AI. It wrote something, but what was important when you use AI is to be descriptive. Give it all of the different objectives that you can. If you want something written saying, I want to send this off, I want to get someone to change their mind, but I want them to feel good about it, I want to do that. It can process information 150 million times faster than you can. Don't be afraid to give it more input, more objectives. Let it do the crunching. Come up with all kinds of options. Even ask it to give you what are the potential reactions. Who's going to react? It's you're sending a letter to someone in your family. How's the family going to react? How they going to treat you? Ask it to do the work for you and the grinding for you. Ask it to do the risks and the rewards. And in the end, you make the decision on whether to act and then assess that. So basically, you've got a mind and you've got a brain. You own them. You can act without a filter. You can just blurt out the next thing that comes to your mind. You can react to the road rage situation. Or you can take control and make a decision on how to. Yes?
I have a question. So,
Yes.
if one uses, I use AI, and I can see all the benefits. What happens to the person in terms of their own critical thinking and ability to develop?
That's an important question. Did you all get that?
No.
Repeat.
What if you use AI, someone uses it, what happens to their critical thinking? And this is something that educators are really struggling with right now. Are you going to, David's wife is an adjunct professor, and we talked a little bit about this on the golf course, but it's here. You just assume when kids come in with a paper, they're likely to have used AI, and those that don't are going to be left behind, so they have to use it. So how do you take advantage of it? And I don't know that the answer is fully worked out, but I think some of it comes down to the critical thinking. Go back and if you use it, what are the results? Try to think through what this is and what you want to achieve. So that's a way to add on that critical thinking while you're leveraging all that processing that it does. And by the way, the answers aren't worked out to that question, but because it's a great question.
Well, I mean, you need discrimination.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is critical thinking.
Yes.
Because you get so much information, you have to discriminate. So you need to use your critical thinking to evaluate
Yes.
whether the information is accurate or not accurate, or if you don't know if it's accurate or not, if you're not sure, how to figure it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you're right. So does it
You
should,
need critical thinking
Yeah.
to use AI, otherwise.
though not everybody does.
Well, I understand that, I understand
You
that.
should
I
be,
understand
yes.
that, but you actually, if you don't have critical thinking, then AI.
It can make mistakes, it can
Yeah.
tell you the exact wrong thing, and, yeah. Yes?
Partly the critical thinking answers my question, but I've heard or read that students who use AI to help write a paper remember less than students who used a computer. And I even think when we researched papers and we used the card catalog and we read a whole lot of stuff that was irrelevant, but I think we may have learned more.
You're probably right. No, I think that's a very topical question. And what happens to jobs and what happens to, I've got a friend in my building who's he has an AI company. He sold his first company to Google and he's starting another one. We had coffee a few months ago and he says, Tad, things are changing so fast with AI. I had 15 engineers just to start. I laid half of them off. And they came out of college and he said part of the issue is they understood AI. Of course, AI is changing rapidly. It solves its own problems.
Yeah.
And does its own programming. Changing so fast, but what they didn't have is the practical knowledge of the problems they were trying to solve, to apply it. So it's a great question, and there's potentially a lot of upheaval going to be happening based on people losing critical thinking and people losing jobs and not transitioning fast enough, because historically we've gone through a few evolutions or revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, but people had at least decades to evolve into new careers. This is happening where he said 1 week later after college, things have changed. And I laid off half my people. So I don't have the perfect answer. We're trying to figure out these answers. Yes?
So this is going back to your comment about writing for schools. According to what I am aware of, and I don't know if you can concur, is academics are already creating their own AI to combat this. So they know exactly who's copying, pasting, how long it took you to.
Can
Yeah.
you speak a little louder for everybody?
Oh, just how long you took to write the sentence. If you copy and pasted it from somewhere, and it can source where too. So there's tools now for academics to figure that out, so they can combat cheating. Yeah,
Some of it they've got AI to sniff out of it.
yeah, basically that's what it
That's
is.
what she was saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
My wife snipped it out right away. Actually, at the bottom I said tab/ChatGPT, just to claim credit for it. So. Yeah, so a lot of this is deciding, and to me it gets back to whether it's your mind, your brain, your reflexes. You need to rely on reflexes to do some things. Example is, I use the example of road rage and driving. 20 years from now, people may not, might not be not even relevant, but at a street level. You've trained yourself to stop at a red light. It's turned to a reflexive action based on repetition, based on things you learn. So your mind can control what you do repetitively as well. Even the quick jerk reactions, based on evolution, taking that deep breath first gives you a chance to think through, and that formula, the aura formula, is a form of critical thinking. Gives you that chance to do that thinking. But it's really, I'm glad to have lived when I did. So, yes, Richard?
Well, there's in art, they're using a lot of